Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 2, Episode 3. Today is Sunday, January the 18th, 2015. My name is Graham Perro. With me today are Tyler Fitch and Melissa Daphne. And we've only have one game to talk about in this episode, but we have a few other things that we want to discuss, so hopefully it will be not a very long episode, but entertaining is the goal. If you head over to google.com/+addicted to lacrosse, that's our Google Plus page, and we have a Q&A app running during this episode. So if you are watching live, you can head over there and ask us any questions, and we will get to the questions during the show. If you are not watching live, don't bother because that won't work. We have some news to talk about before the one game, and another thing we wanted to talk about that's kind of fun. But I guess we will start with kind of the big news of the week, that being the retirement of Gavin Prout. Melissa, I guess this is more in your ballpark, so I guess I'll let you get to this. What do you think?
This was definitely a big piece of news that flew under the radar just a little bit. I don't know how many Colorado fans actually do know about it. They tweeted about it and put a post up. But Gavin Prout's definitely been a fan favorite in Colorado. I know a lot of people around the league actually have a huge dislike for him, but he's definitely a fan favorite here. And so with all the drama that went with him being traded away and reacquired and then cut and just everything that's kind of happened, I think this caught a lot of people here by surprise. Everyone I've spoken to so far was kind of like, wow, yeah, this kind of came out of left field. They're being very vague right now, saying that details will be announced at a later date. So we really don't know. We don't know, is his number actually being retired? I would assume if they're making this kind of even a press statement about it, that they're going to do something like that. But it's definitely a surprise. It's good to see because Gavin did spend so much time here. He really did have a big impact. He was definitely key in the 2006 championship. So it's good to see that they are doing something, but there's just been so much contention between the organization and him, or the general manager and him, or whatever was going on. There's lots of rumors around, but he was definitely a fan favorite. He was an all-star most of his career, I think. I think, Graham, you said you had pulled up some of his stats, but it'll be good. He definitely, they had a big statement from him on the Mammoth website, how he's doing saying all the things he should. He bleeds burgundy, silver, and black for 9 seasons, and he loved playing here, and this is his home, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for him. Since it just seems like it came out of nowhere, it's not like they have all the build-up, when they retired Langtry's jersey or when they retired Gary Gates' jersey. So we'll see if it's something that's just kind of snuck in at the next home game or if they actually build it up. I don't know what you guys think about it.
Go ahead, Green.
Okay. Yeah, Prout was kind of the face of the Mammoth for a number of years, along with guys like Langtry and Gate. But I think Prout was the captain for a good portion of that time. And I'm just looking at his stats here now, and between his rookie year in 2002 and 2010, he was over 90 points 3 times, and most of the other times was in the 70s and 80s, high 80s. Even his latest 2012, he had 83 points with the Mammoth. And the 2006 season, was he the playoff MVP that year?
He might have been.
I don't remember if it was him or Nash. But
Nash may have gotten it the last game, but during the playoffs, I think Prout had the bigger impact because it was actually Chris Levis that got us to the next round.
Okay, because just looking at his stats here, in 3 games in the playoffs in 2006, he had 25 points, which is over 8 points a game. That's outstanding. So just his numbers are amazing, really, when you look at it. He ended up with 922 points in 184 games. his rookie season and Blaine Manning's were the same, and he ended up playing 3 extra games more than Manning, and collected 90 points more. So not bad at all. He's number 9 all time in scoring in NLL history, and will remain there for quite some time because the next person who is behind him, who's still active, is Mark Stainhouse, who's way down at 765. So he's going to be in the top 10 for a number of years. Obviously, he was a great scorer, and a great leader as well. But he was known to be a fiery guy, and he dropped the mitts now and again as well. So, yeah, I don't think he was a face-off guy. No, my mistake. He did take a bunch of face-offs as well. So he was just one of those guys who could do anything. I don't know how well he was defensively. That's, I guess, the only thing he wasn't necessarily known for. But when you're putting up that many points, you don't have to be good defensively. There did seem to be some whether it's personality issues with Prout and ownership or management or somebody in the Mammoth organization in the later years. And he was traded off to Edmonton, and then they got him back. And then he was just released. It just kind of dropped him. I don't remember it being their like big fanfare that they were making a big deal out of it. They just sort of dropped him, and that was the end of it. And didn't play at all last year. Tried to make a comeback with the Nighthawks this year. Didn't seem to work. And I guess he figured, okay, that's enough. But it was a classy move for the Mammoth to just drop whatever personality issues they had before and sign him back and let him retire as a member of the Mammoth. So that was pretty good. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is the right level of recognition to what he's done with the team. Kind of in the era where every kid gets a trophy, to bring him back for one day and you're going to honor him because he's a top 10 all-time scorer in the league, that's appropriate. That's a good use of people's time, and he'll bring back lots of memories to people if winning games in Colorado. My first 2 years watching the Stealth were 05 and 06, and so 06 was the Mammoth Championship season, 05 they were good as well. And I just kept watching him come in and beat the Stealth. So my first exposure was a guy who was great. He would make big plays, like you said, not on defense, but if whatever the team needed to do, he could do it. His rookie season, he had the NLL rookie scoring record from whatever his season was until Reese Dutch came along in 09 and took it away. But he came in immediately for huge impact and pretty much produced constantly until whatever it was that happened made it so that he didn't fit, and teams get retooled. Maybe his role lessened and he wasn't mentally prepared for it. I couldn't say. But he went off to Edmonton, tried to make a run at it, came back. Kind of funny they took a year off and tried again. But like I said, it's the right way to recognize somebody who's produced at that level. Some guys just kind of fade away as they get older and a rookie takes their spot, but I don't like him as a player, but he's the person who's worthy of something you usually see in other sports like the NFL, where a guy gets a one-day contract gets to retire on the team. It was a good move by the Mammoth, and for somebody who earned it. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, he was definitely a big leader on the team. His presence was, after they cut him, or traded him, sorry, it was definitely, that was when the Mammoth went on that big losing streak, especially at home, where they just couldn't seem to win until they brought him back, which was definitely interesting in its own right. But his leadership was just always there. He always seemed very upbeat, very energetic, hard-nosed. It was definitely, he didn't seem like the type of leader that he was going to ask you to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. And I think that really carried through the whole team. And they've definitely, watching the captaincy change a little bit, like when Gallant was leader, he's very well respected, but I think he was more of a quiet leader, whereas Prout was probably a little more in your face, which is what the team needed at the time. I don't know what kind of captain John Grant Jr. is, but they definitely. It seemed like Prout learned a lot from when Gary Gay was on the team, and so I think he definitely took that forward. It was nice. I'm very happy to see that he's retiring a Mammoth because I know a lot of fans were very upset that he was no longer a Mammoth and just the way everything went down. So whether there's any truth to any of the rumors, whether it was just he just wasn't fitting in, they just didn't think he was as good as somebody else, I don't know. There's so much drama around it. But it seems right that he should retire a Mammoth, and I do hope they do something significant because he was a huge part of this team. He was a huge part of putting fans in the seat. He was a huge part of the wins. His impact was there every year he was here, and so they should do something pretty big, I hope.
All right, so congratulations to Gavin Prout on an outstanding career, and congratulations to the Mammoth for making the right decision to honor him. So that's good. Another piece of news that happened this week: a couple of roster moves on the Stealth. I guess they weren't too pleased with the outcome of last week's game against the Rock, so they made some changes on the back end. Tyler, I'll let you address these moves.
Yeah, most of them appear to be injury-based. Tyler Garrison tweaked something to the point where they put him on a 10-day injured reserve. And I don't know who else they dropped down. I didn't dig into it that closely. But it's also slightly, desperation. They're just throwing stuff on the wall to see what sticks. And they've lost both their games. They've lost on the defensive end. And the offense put up 13 goals Saturday and still lost. And usually if you hit 13, you should be on the winning side of all games in the NLL as far as what the averages predict. Tim Henderson came back after a year serving in the military, and he's not going to take the ball down and do much, but defensively he looked like he hadn't missed a beat. He just came out ready to go. And that was really impressive to see because for an American, so he didn't grow up with the game, he didn't have instincts to fall back on 10, 15 years of growing up playing the game. He's got one season of playing the game, and he just kind of fit right back in. Colin Butcher, I think that's his last name. He's in shape and ready to go. He's playing, I think, CLAX before and winning Man Cups, so he's ready to go. And he was all right. And then they had a young rookie kid named Chapman. He got his first NLL goal, but I'm not sure how collectively. I didn't watch for him on defense that closely, I guess. But as a whole, the defensive unit is not set or strong. I think they took at least 10 more. They being Buffalo took at least 10 more shots on the Stealth and leaving T-Rich to do a lot of heavy lifting in goal. I think there'll be more roster moves with Garrison on a 10-day injured reserve. If I saw correctly, they'll have to make some change this week because he should return because he'll have done his 10 days. It's just what you got to do when things aren't quite going right. Well, yeah, we'll see what happens this week. But that's all I got to say about those.
Okay. I believe Boucher is right. I would have said Boucher because that's kind of what it looks like. But everything I've heard is Boucher. I believe he played for the Bandits last year in at least a couple of games. I'm not sure he played all season, but and Conrad Chapman I'd never heard of. So good on him for scoring his first goal. As for that game, we will get to that in a minute. But we have something else to talk about because there's only one game this week, so we figured we'd throw in a couple of extra things. And the first one we want to get to is our favorite game that we've seen live. And I guess I'll start since I'm already talking. And I'll see if I can think of a couple. I've been going to NLL games since 2001, so it's 2001? Yeah, 2001. one of the earlier games that I remember was a game against Albany in that first year, 2001. It might even have been one of my first or second games at the Air Canada Centre. It ended up as a 7-4 win for the Rock, and I think to this day it is still the lowest scoring NLL game in history, only 11 goals in the whole game. And I remember it being odd because I hadn't seen all that many games, and I certainly wasn't familiar with the stats or on average how many goals were scored. But I remember that both goalies, which I believe would have been Bob Watson and Dallas Eliuk, just stood on their heads the whole game, and it was outstanding. And so, like, the few games that I had seen were all your typical, 14-12, 12-11, those sorts of things, and suddenly 7-4 just seems really low. There was a game probably within a year or two of that, I can't remember exactly when, 2003, 2004, against the Washington Power before they moved to become the Mammoth. And I can't remember, there were two of them against the Power at the ACC. One of them went to either overtime or double overtime, and I just remember that being a really stressful game. And a couple of people that I go to Rock games with just do not like overtime because they just feel too stressed. But I remember that one being really stressful, and Blaine Manning eventually scored the winner, and I think that might even have been a playoff game. If it wasn't a playoff game, it was late in the season and had playoff implications, so that it was a very important game. So I remember that one, and that may or may not have been Paul Gates' last game, because I remember him standing near the Rock bench. I don't know why it was the Rock bench and not the other bench. Basically taking off his equipment and tossing it into the crowd. He tossed his lacrosse stick in, he tossed his helmet in, he tossed his elbow pads in. I think he might have taken his shoulder pads off and tossed them, just tossing them all into the crowd, which I thought was kind of a cool move. Other than that, another game that I remember, well, I guess last year's championship in Rochester was pretty cool. That plus the mini game. It was awfully loud in there, considering there was less than 10,000 people there, I'm pretty sure. And I've been to games in Buffalo with 19,000. They're pretty loud in Buffalo. But they got awfully loud in Rochester as well. So that was really, really something to see. And the where was it? There was the Rock game in Toronto against Arizona, which was the championship game in 2005. And the Rock won that one. It was awfully loud. It was, I think that remains the highest attended game, which was 19,600 or some crazy thing. So those are my memorable games. Melissa, what do you have?
I would say it's tied between two for me. One of the most obvious ones is my very, very, very first game, and that was the last home game of the inaugural season. We were playing the Albany Attack, and it was just an intense game. Like, I didn't even know what lacrosse was at the time. Some friend had tickets, and they're like, "Hey, let's go check this out. I don't know what it's all about. Let's go see." And so there was four of us, and we were just having an awesome time, and it was an intense game, and it ended with a bench clearing brawl. And I just remember Brian Reese getting into it, and Dave Stilley was actually, I think, on the other side of that, which is kind of funny since he became a fan favorite. And it was just intense. And after that, I was immediately hooked. I wanted to see more. I was so upset that that was the last game of the season at home. But we went to all the playoff watching parties, just anything we could watch. I remember watching a Rochester Nighthawk Toronto Rock game, and it was an awesome game. But it made us seek out more, and so that's definitely that has to be up there as one of my favorites. My other favorite, since we're talking about live games, is actually the home opener for 2007. We were playing Calgary. It was a sold-out crowd, so it was just loud. And like with just about every Calgary game against Colorado Mammoth, it was very close most of the game. and it kept going back and forth, and it was intense, and there were scuffles, and it was just one of those games that just kept you on the edge of your seat, like you just couldn't wait. And then towards the end of the fourth quarter, the Mammoths just kind of blew it open, and they took the game. But it was just such an exciting game, such a good game up until the last of the fourth quarter. It wasn't even one side wasn't even dominating at all. It was always like one goal. One team would tie it, and then they might take the lead, and the other team would come back, and then the other one might score and tie it again. And it was awesome. Like, I just love that game. We used to DVR all the Mammoth games, and that is one that we have kept over the years because I love watching it. Even knowing the outcome, it still just gets your adrenaline going. It was such a good game. And anytime I have somebody who I'm trying to introduce to the game that can't go to a game because it's off season or they're just not sure about it, I'll try and get them to watch that one. It's my favorite by far. I love that game. So that one and the home opener are probably my most memorable. What about you, Tyler?
So my most memorable live game would be in Colorado's 2007 playoffs. It was the first time since I started following the San Jose Stealth that they made the playoffs. So it had been 2 years of them being bad, and then 2007 they traded for Colin Doyle. Started a little rough, and then they kind of hit their groove, made the playoffs as the number 4 seed, and go to Colorado. And Colorado the year before is the champs, packed house, everybody's looking for them, number 1 seed to repeat. And the Stealth ended up battling with them into overtime and getting a 15-14 victory. And it was amazing. It was one other fan from San Jose we knew was there, and my wife and I, like 3 of us jumping up and down while 19,000 people are just sitting there stunned as the OT goal happens. And so many things happened in that game. Both teams switched their goalies like at least twice, I feel like. They were just in and out, in and out. G. Nash played 29 minutes. Chris Levis played 35. Cosmo played 48, and Aaron Bold played 15 or 16. Stealth had a penalty in overtime, so that's like 2 minutes of freaking out time because you mess up in overtime and it's over, right? It was just the greatest experience, especially going from San Jose where we had nobody attending games really, and then seeing the full arena. It was so much energy. It was such an amazing experience. So we got hooked on that. And the Stealth home games have historically been in small arenas or empty arenas. So based on that, we always decided to just go to road games, road playoff games. So we went to Calgary twice, and those would probably be 2 years ago, would be my second favorite live game. It was a great experience, loud crowd. Home Stealth games haven't really done it for me. Their run in 2010 for the title was good. They had to go to Seattle for one game playing the Kingdom, which was Key Arena, which was very memorable. Rabel got an OT goal 8 seconds into the game, and that place was packed and going crazy. So for a Stealth home game, that was the most exciting. That was even more exciting than championship, because the championship they had a lead with a couple goals as kind of waiting time out, but a quick overtime winner, the place was going much more wild in Seattle than it actually did in Everett, I feel. But the number 1 game was Stealth going to Colorado in playoffs and winning in overtime. It was sticking with me. First thing I always go back to when I think about what's the best game.
That one was definitely a memorable game. I actually met Tyler at that game. So
yeah, Blue Sky Grill.
Blue Sky. And that's also the game why we have replay.
Yes. 2 guys from the Stealth, Wiles and Zwicky, in the crease, waiting for the ball to roll across the line. It was so good.
All right. We have one more question that we got from a viewer, Brad MacArthur, former NLL player, so hello, Brad, sent us an email. Love to know how each of you became fans of the NLL, and does your passion extend to other leagues, i.e. MLS, or MSL, sorry, WLA, CLAX, Junior A, etc.? Melissa, I'll let you start. You kind of touched on this while talking about the Mammoth game.
Yeah, it was definitely that first Mammoth game that got me into lacrosse. Like I said, I didn't even know what the sport of lacrosse was. I didn't go to a school that had it, and very few schools, even in Colorado, had it at that time. It's definitely grown. A lot more schools have it, and it has extended. While box lacrosse is my favorite, and I probably watch the most NLL, when I have been able to, I've definitely watched the WLA when they've done some of the free streams. And my goal is to make it up to British Columbia and actually catch several of them. I missed my opportunity a few years ago because I thought I was going to a conference and it was like I was going to be able to go to 4 of them, and I was so excited. And then I wasn't able to go to the conference. But it definitely has extended. We had Outlaws tickets for several years, and then we stopped, and we got them again, and then we stopped again. And I like outdoor lacrosse. I like the finesse of outdoor lacrosse, but it just doesn't have the same energy as the indoor stuff, and so I would consider myself more an indoor fan. But we've gone to some of the DU Pioneer playoff games. If they weren't playing when it was so cold and you weren't sitting on cement and really cold bleachers, I would probably be more willing to go to some of their earlier games. But like they're playing Duke on Valentine's Day, and Colorado isn't exactly warm in February. We sometimes have nice days, we sometimes have sunshine, but historically it's not warm. You're probably going to be looking at 30-degree temperatures that day. But I will definitely watch just about any bit of lacrosse I can. When we had the World Games, I went to a couple of those. Unfortunately, the tickets were too pricey, so I wasn't able to go to more than the one day, but I will definitely watch lacrosse just about anywhere, anytime I can now. I absolutely love the sport, and I'm glad I actually discovered it, back in that one year, just that one random game. I never knew what it was before then. So it's definitely had a huge impact on my life. If I was younger, I probably would have started playing. But I was definitely already post-college age at that time. But yeah, I love this sport. It's indoor or outdoor. I'll sit down and watch it. College, pro, doesn't matter. I'll watch it. What about you, Tyler?
So being American, my exposure to the game was first based on field lacrosse. In high school, 2 brothers moved out from the Baltimore area who played and wanted to keep playing, so they started a team, and I got to play 1 year in high school. And I went to a small college outside of Portland, and they're like, "You've played before?" Like, "Yeah, 1 year." Like, "That's fine. You're going to start." And it's like, oh boy. So I got to keep playing in college at just the club level. We got to pay our own way, drive ourselves to the games, and just tons of fun though. Just weekends out on the road and meeting other people who play. And so I grew up basically playing field through and some organized stuff. And then I moved to California for my work and lived in San Francisco at the time when the Stealth moved over from Albany. I went down, caught 1 game, and was hooked on indoor. It was so much fun, so much more fast-paced, exciting, all the standard things you hear about indoor versus field. It really holds up. So bought season tickets immediately, and started going to those games. The year after that, the MLL expanded to San Francisco with the Dragons. So started watching MLL games. I've watched them on TV before because it was pro field lacrosse and I knew field lacrosse. I was watching those before the NLL because NLL didn't have a good TV contract. There were sometimes on ESPN, but very rarely. And once we got hooked on indoor, we started learning about the Canadian Summer Leagues. So I'd follow stealth players in the WLA or MSL as much as I could. And we left San Francisco, moved back up to Portland area, And now, if it works out, we'll usually take a week in the summer and go up to BC and just watch games. With the way they have the teams rotate and play games every night, there's at least 2 weeks a year where you can go up and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday you can catch a game on the Lower Mainland. So if you go up for 5 nights, you'll watch 5 games and kind of get my fill for the summer of live action and get to see all the great arenas like Queen Anne Park and where the Salmon Bellies play. Other than that, before I had kids, I just threw all my money into going and watching lacrosse games. Like I said, we'd go to all the Stealth playoff games, so I've been to numerous arenas. 2011, went to Prague and watched World Indoors. My cousin was working there at the time, so kind of got a bundle in to go see him and hang out with him as well. But got to watch games all day. It was very nice. I would say that's about it. So I try to watch, like Melissa, I'll watch whatever I can at this point. I have a hard time paying for the WLA broadcast anymore. Used to have free Wednesday night games out of Langley, which were awesome, but they've kind of put the kibosh on that. But it's just a great experience, fun to watch, and get to know the players. The fact you can go up, pretty much hang around after the game and get to know them is what makes it a better fan experience. You're not going to go hang out with a football player or basketball player after a game, but lacrosse player, you can hang out and get to know them a little bit and actually care for them more and feel like, oh, that guy's really cool and he's playing for the right reasons because you can talk to him. It's just an experience that's unmatched any other pro sport that I can think of. How about you, Graham?
Well, I didn't really know much about lacrosse at all growing up. One of my roommates in university had a lacrosse stick, and he was the only guy I knew who did. So he played a lot of wall ball because he didn't know anybody else with a stick. So that was it. I don't think he actually played any games or in a league or anything. And that was my exposure to lacrosse up until 2000, when my friend Mike was talking about this new team called the Toronto Rock, for which his nephew played, and his nephew was Sean Williams. So it was his, I guess, his second season. I think he did play for the Raiders the year before. So Mike and a couple of other friends were heading down to Maple Leaf Gardens for rock games, and I never managed to make it to any. And I honestly didn't have an awful lot of interest in it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then at some point they were heading down to Buffalo to see the Bandits play the Wings. And I think it was a playoff game. I can't remember for sure, but it was near the end of the season at least. And from their place in Newmarket, they're basically driving right by my house on the way to Buffalo. So they said, hey, you want to come along? So I said, sure, what the heck. Went down to this game, watched it, and just like you guys, I was instantly hooked. I've always been a big hockey fan, and this was, like hockey but faster, if that's possible. And just the different strategies. It's obviously very similar to hockey, but the different strategies made it really exciting, I thought, and I loved that game. They said, we have 4 season tickets for the Rock at Maple Leaf Gardens, but they're moving to the Air Canada Centre next year, and we were thinking of expanding our season ticket base. Do you want one? And I said, absolutely. So I became a season ticket holder for the Rock, never having actually seen a Rock game. And I didn't know any of the players, and I did a little bit of research, and I found some guy named Jim Veltman. That was the only name I knew going into the first Rock game the next season, and turned out to be a pretty good name to know. He was an okay player. And yeah, then I just got right into it after that, and the rest is history, I suppose. As for the other leagues, I cannot explain why I'm not addicted to the other leagues like I am the NLL. I watch the NLL. I'll watch games that don't involve the Rock. I know the players. I know where they play. I know where they used to play. I know a lot of stuff about them. And then I look at MSL, and their games are cheaper, and some of them are actually closer to my house than the ACC, and it's the same players, and I just can't get jazzed about it, and I don't understand why. I have been to a few games. I went to a couple of or one-man cup game in Peterborough a couple of years ago. I went to the Man Cup games in Six Nations this past year. I've been to a couple of CLAX games as well. Um, that's about it. I haven't seen an awful lot of MSL games, and every year I think next summer I'll go to more because it's $5 for some of them or $10 or something, and Brampton is closer than the ACC to my house. Six Nations is probably closer. I can get to these games and I just don't, and I can't explain why. Um, Field lacrosse never interested me at all for the longest time. And I'd watch a couple of games and just go, it just doesn't do it for me. Like, I don't watch soccer. This is kind of the lacrosse version of soccer. It's a little more interesting than soccer. Doesn't compare to the indoor game. And then I went to a Toronto Nationals game when they first started, and that was pretty good. Then they moved to Hamilton to become the Hamilton Nationals. And the stadium they're playing in is 10 kilometers from my house, not even. My son goes to school. I think he can actually see the McMaster campus where the stadium is from his school. So it's just not even a kilometer down the road. So we started going to Nationals games there, and I started to get more of an appreciation for the outdoor game. And I think I went to one game the first year they were there, and I went to 3 or 4 the next year they were there, because they were pretty cheap games as well, and the drive is nothing. So we started going, and I actually thought, I might even get season tickets for the Nationals next year, and boom, they moved to Florida. So, yeah, I kind of lost my my excitement there. I haven't really paid much attention to the MLL after that. But if they were to come back to Hamilton, I think I could start buying tickets for the field lacrosse as well. So that's our stories of how we got into lacrosse. So thanks, Brad, for asking that question. That was a lot of fun. Okay, now let's get on to the games, or the game this week. Just the one game, Buffalo playing in Vancouver. This one was going to be a tough call, and I don't know about you guys, but I certainly had a tough time predicting this game. I eventually went with Buffalo just because I didn't kind of like what I saw from Vancouver the previous week. But I didn't figure it was going to be a blowout by any stretch, and I was definitely right there. This was a lot of fun game to watch, I thought. I did have some feed problems in the first half, but so every now and again the feed would just freeze entirely, and then I'd sort of refresh the page and it would come back. That was kind of annoying. But when you're watching the NLL live this year, it seems to be par for the course. So when the feed was working, the video quality was really good, but that's typical for Langley as well. They have, I don't know what they do there, it's different from everywhere else, but they always have a really, really good feed from Langley. But on to the game. Very close game. The Bandits never led by more than 3. And I got a kick out of this one. The Stealth were down by 1 goal 10 different times in this game. They only managed to score the next goal to tie it up twice. So from that point of view, the Bandits dominated, but and I think the Bandits had the lead for more than 50 minutes out of the 60 minutes in the game. But looking at the score, it obviously wasn't a Bandit-dominated game. So I thought Ilya Gaich played really well, and I was impressed with him the previous week as well. So he's making a bit of a case for Transition Player of the Year. Obviously, it's really early to start awarding that, but I thought he'd played a really good game. The face-offs were just dominated by Buffalo, and I think that was part of the Stealth problem anyway. Is that either the Stealth would score or the Bandits would score, and they'd start again. And 75% of the time, I looked it up, Bandits won the next face-off. So whenever play stops like that and there's a face-off and you're almost guaranteed you're not going to get the ball, you just get put on the defense more often. And if you can't rely on at least getting half of the face-offs, that's got to be a bit of a downer for your defensive core. And I added in the notes that Jay Thornberry might be the best face-off guy in the league, not named Snyder. And Tyler added that Jeremy Thompson would disagree, and you're probably right. Thompson is certainly up there, though. Looking at the stats this year, Bob Snyder is winning 39.7% of his faceoffs. Jordan McIntosh is under 50. Jeremy Thompson is under 50. So I don't know what's going on with those guys. Jeff Snyder's up near the top, as always, and Jay Thornberry is right behind him. So faceoffs was part of the issue for the Stealth. The only other thing I wanted to say was watching Dane Smith on the offense. It just blows my mind that Buffalo used him primarily on defense last year. Obviously, he's a big guy. He's a strong guy. He's good on defense. So having him back there is not a liability by any stretch. But when he's that good a goal scorer, you just got to put him on offense. I suppose you could say the same thing for Mark Steinhaus, who's also good at any end of the floor you want to put him. But anyway, Tyler, what did you think?
So I realized I say Jeremy Thompson is a very good face-off guy, and then 2 weeks ago, Edmonton and Buffalo played each other. And Jay Thornberry was 15 out of 22, or basically 70%. So yeah, he's better than Jeremy Thompson right now, statistically and head-to-head to prove it. Well, it's a tough game to watch. It really makes me worried about the Stealth here when 2 weeks in a row they have teams traveling cross country and they get blown out by one and can't put away the other, and they're really hurting defensively. It's not the same defensive core they had play against Calgary by a long ways. Chris O'Doherty is a huge loss, even though he was out late in the Calgary game. Rory Smith's a bigger loss, anchoring the defense. And then getting back even further is the idea that Kyle Sorensen isn't there this year as their captain for the last 2 years to be the leader that they're used to. So I don't know if anybody's stepping up. Curtis Hodgson is wearing the C now, but I don't think he can rally the troops like Sorensen did. So 2012 was the year that Chris Hall was out, but also Kyle Sorensen was out most of the year, and the Stealth were just awful. And this year, Sorensen's out again. Defense has tons of injuries, and it's going to be a long season for the Stealth fans. And I was worried about the Toronto blowout hurting the attendance, and I don't know what the attendance was the night before, but it was awful. Week before. But their attendance was awful last night. Tons of blue seats in the crowd. I don't know what to say. Offensively, they did all right, but they could never get a run going, and that's all Jay Thornberry, shutting down and playing make it, take it, lose it, take it back anyways. That's what it was when you went over 70%. Going to be a long season for the Stealth if this continues, and I don't know. A couple young guys playing, get some goals for the Stealth, but they shouldn't have to be playing young guys. They should be playing an established team, an established roster. And Tyler Richards facing tons of shots comparatively to the opponents. He's doing the best he can. But if you had the same number of same save percentage as the opponent, they're always going to lose because they're just giving up more shots. There's only so much you can do. Melissa, you watched through it, I know. So what do you think about this game?
I thought this was actually overall a pretty good game. You know, I definitely wondered, because both of these teams can be very inconsistent, especially Buffalo with their penalties. A lot of times they will take themselves out of the game with penalties. As soon as I saw Todd LaBranche was reffing, I knew this was going to be an interesting game because you never know what is going to get called. I think he is one of the most inconsistent refs, and there was definitely things he called this game that made you go, okay, and other things that he called that were definitely right, and other things that were missed. You have that with any ref. I just think sometimes it's a little more obscure with him. But it's always interesting to see him when it's not the Mammoth playing because it's still the same kind of results, just different teams. It was one thing that we were discussing while watching it because I thought it was good because we were discussing I think last week, that it seemed like the Stealth had kind of given up. And so it was good to see that they were in this game start to finish, I would say. I wouldn't say that there was really any moments that either team was really looking flat. There was some great passing goals. There was some great screenshots. Both goalies stood on their heads and stopped some shots that a lot of goalies would have missed. It was definitely exciting. But it was also those little things, those little mistakes that it made you go, what are you guys thinking? And at one point, it was 3-on-3 because both teams had too many min penalties on the 4-on-4. And it's just like, that was just a stupid mistake. And they were right back to back, too. So I don't know if they were just cheating a little bit. Unfortunately, the camera wasn't on the benches or even near it when those were called. So it was one of those things that that's just a stupid mistake. Too many men is usually called, I think, because the refs are getting lax and the teams keep pushing it farther and farther until they get caught. Makes sense. But to get down to a 3-on-3, I mean, you're on the power play. That was that was bad. There was definitely a play with Ratcliffe that, at least in my household, garnered discussion because we're always talking about with the Mammoth, not fighting for the ball and really just kind of running off the floor. And so it came up, okay, if you're running across the field and you're passing in front of the player that now has the ball, shouldn't you at least try and stick check them or something as you're passing? Or is it better just to run off and get off as fast as you can? And so that was a big point, and maybe we can even discuss that after. But it was an interesting game. I think the last couple minutes of the game definitely were unusual, and it could have ended very different if a call could have gone a different way, things like that. Because the winning goal from the Bandits, in a way, was almost a fluke, and there was even some discussion on what exactly happened. But, Benesh had the ball on the ground, and to me, it looked like he kind of flung the ball out a little bit between the feet of his defender, to try and get it out in play. And my husband thought maybe it was actually he was stick checked or something. But the ball basically rolled out behind the defender's feet. It was Colin Boucher. And by the time he actually realizes the ball that they're fighting over is right behind him, it's already been picked up by Recitaris, and they're scoring. And so it was just one of those kind of fluke plays that it was like they just didn't quite know where the ball was. So there was that, and then there's some controversy over whether there was a missed call. The ball appeared to hit a member of the Buffalo Bandits on the bench, and so it's been argued that the play should have been stopped and turned over, and so that could have cost the Stealth the game. That stuff was something we were discussing. But it was a good game, and I hope that Vancouver takes from it that they played well and takes that into next week. Because as we've discussed, this is a team with so much talent, just like with the Mammoth, that just seems to struggle, and they just have so many ups and downs, and you just never know which team is going to show. And this was a good game, maybe because they knew more people were going to be watching them because they were the only game this week. I don't know, but both teams came out to play, and it was a nonstop fight. So it was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, the Stealth had two great looks in the final minute, design play for Reese, right about the minute point, and the final possession, Johnny Palace got a good run in, clean look, and Cosmo shut him down both, and he deserved to win the game if he can stop looks like that. That's one other thought in my mind. Attendance, I looked up attendance, it was 4,700 a week before, only 3,400 this week. It was a huge drop-off, and I don't know what it's going to be like going forward. Standard Stealth problem, just different arena.
It's unfortunate when you look at the Stealth that you can't just say, well, if they were to have a successful season and do really well on the floor, that would help their attendance because they won the championship in 2011 and it didn't make any difference. They had, they went to the championship 2 years in a row and it didn't make any difference. So it's almost like the players are like, well, if we can't get people in here by playing awesome and winning championships, what more can we do? That's the best that we can do, and the people still aren't coming. So they're kind of out of options. I don't know what else they do. Maybe they decided rather than focus on success as a team, we'll bring in Johnny Powless and pump him up and make him the guy that everybody wants to see, and that'll bring in local native community and stuff, which I think is a great thing as well. Unfortunately, that puts a ton of pressure on Powless, and I mean he's played okay so far. He hasn't been racking up the goals like they probably hoped he would, but again, like we mentioned last week, just the fact that he's there, defenders have to pay attention to him because they know that he's a dynamic player and he can make these kind of plays. So you can't just leave him alone because he hasn't scored so much. And so the fact that they're focusing on him might open up Lewis Ratcliffe a little bit, or Reese Dutch, or somebody. So just his presence is helping them offensively.
Yeah, he had 6 assists last night. Lewis had 3 goals, which is great individual performance, but it doesn't mean that the whole team offense was flowing, but it means that his shots were going in. He had a pretty good performance there. And what were you just talking about? Something else stuck in my head, but I got to write these down. I can't remember when I get a thought. I'm having a bad night. Yeah, all right, that's my thought. I just want to say I always beg on Lewis, but he had 3 goals, so that wasn't too bad a performance.
All right. Let's move on to our predictions. I picked Buffalo for this game, as did Melissa, so we both went 1-0 this week. Tyler went 0-1. And that brings our season total so far to a crappy 2-8 for me and a crappy 2-8 for Tyler. So we're tied for, we'll call it second place rather than last. And Melissa is at 500 now, 5-5. So nice job, Melissa. And seeing as you are by far the leader here, we'll let you go first on your picks for this coming weekend.
Yeah, we'll see how long I hold the lead, as last year showed. There was definitely a couple games this week that I waffled on, but overall it just seemed a little easier. With Buffalo and Toronto, I definitely went back and forth on whether or not I thought Buffalo or Toronto was going to take it. As we know, as I just said, Buffalo definitely has a way of taking themselves out of the game, whether they're winning or losing, with penalties, and it seems like there are certain teams that bring that out in them more than others. So with Toronto, I expect this is going to be a chippy game. But I'm going to go with Buffalo. A big part of that is the fact that they did just play this weekend, and sometimes the bye weeks really can be very bad for a team, especially so early in the season. So I think the fact that they just played last week, or technically this week, and they're going to be playing again, and Toronto didn't, might just give them that small advantage on that first night. With New England and Minnesota, until Minnie shows me otherwise, especially going against a team that we've been talking about how strong they're looking, amazingly how much they're gelling already, New England just seems like the stronger choice there. Toronto and Rochester, this was a toughie because we know what Rochester can do, and they've just been really struggling this season so far. But just like I was saying with Toronto and the potential bye-week rust, I think Rochester might have that, and the fact that Toronto played the night before might actually help them instead of hurt them. So I'm going to go with Toronto there. Vancouver and Colorado, I definitely went back and forth on because both of these teams can be so hot or cold. And it's really hard because you never know which team is going to show up. And usually between these two, it's chippy, it's close games, just like with Calgary. And it's usually anyone's game. So you kind of have a 50-50 shot. And I'm going to go with Vancouver. I think that bye-week rust definitely tends to hit the Mammoth more. And so I think Vancouver, having played this weekend, might actually have that slight advantage there too. Not to mention they love coming into Colorado and winning, and Colorado sometimes does struggle at home lately. With Edmonton and Calgary, that was a little tough because both teams have definitely been struggling a little bit this season so far. But traditionally, Calgary has dominated Edmonton, and so I'm going to go with that one. What about you, Tyler?
Okay. Yeah, having watched both Buffalo and Toronto play the Stealth in consecutive weeks, and Toronto blew out the Stealth, and Buffalo got through there with just a one-goal victory. Using that as a measuring bar, I clearly picked Buffalo to win. I don't know why. I think the bye week rust is valid concern, and they'll be at home. And I think Cordingley is getting a better grasp for using the roster, like running Dane Smith out the front door. They're a pretty good team, and I have them beating Toronto. Minnesota at New England, totally on the New England bandwagon until they prove me wrong. They just have this energy about them that says we don't know we're not supposed to be good. We're just going to play the best game we can, and they're very productive. Toronto at Rochester. I like teams on the second night of a 2-game weekend, so they'll have worked out all the kinks the night before, and they'll go into Rochester and get the win in my mind. Rochester is really only 7 goals 2 weeks ago against New England. They'll either come out really looking to change their ways, or they'll go the same, but I think it's going to be more of them going the same. They'll still get their feet underneath them later. Vancouver at Colorado. I can't pick the Stealth right now with the defense that they have, or basically don't have. And Colorado's played some great games so far, and I think they'll just take out the Stealth, and it won't even be close as it historically has been between those two. And Edmonton at Calgary was my hardest pick. Edmonton is obviously way better than being 0-2, but so is Calgary. Somebody finally will get their first win between the two, and I think being at home, it'll go Calgary's way. Their atmosphere at home, their crowd at home, is a big difference maker for them, and they'll get the win because of that. All right, Graham, your turn.
Okay, I don't have an awful lot more to add. You guys pretty much covered these games reasonably well. I'm going to get against the grain on the Buffalo-Toronto game, and I can't really explain why. I think Toronto has a lot of confidence going into this game. They've played well in their first 2. Buffalo obviously is 2-0 in their last 2. They lost against the Black Wolves, but then they beat Edmonton and they beat Vancouver. So I guess both teams are going in on a 2-game winning streak. Buffalo has traditionally done well in Toronto, while Toronto has traditionally done well in Buffalo. So the fact that it's in Toronto is almost giving Buffalo an advantage. But I have a feeling, can't explain why, but I'm going with Toronto on that one. Minnesota, New England, you guys covered it. New England until they prove otherwise, I'm going with. And I don't know if you guys can hear that, but somebody's printing something here. There's a loud printer going on. And Minnesota played well against Edmonton, so it's not like they're crappy 0-2 or 0-3 or anything, but I'm gonna have to go with New England on that one. Toronto Rochester, you guys said it as well. I'm going with the Rock on that one. It blows me away that Rochester could be 0-3 after this weekend. What blows me away more is that one of Edmonton and Calgary will be 0-3 after this weekend. I skipped a game, but I'll get back to that. Of the 3 undefeated teams, 2 of which are Edmonton and Calgary, Edmonton has scored like 18 goals, Rochester has scored 19, Calgary scored 30. So their offense is clicking, their defense just isn't, so they're losing the high-scoring games. So if their offense can click and Edmonton's offense isn't clicking, got to go for Calgary there. And like you said, Melissa, these two teams meet a lot in the regular season, and Calgary dominates. So I'm got to go with Calgary there. The last one was Vancouver and Colorado. Like you said, Tyler, Vancouver's defensive problems aren't solved. They're not horrible. But they've still got some work to do, I think. And Colorado has looked really good in their couple of games, so I got to go with them. yeah, I guess that's it for our predictions, and that's it for the show, unless you guys have other things that you want to mention.
The only thing I would add, Graham, is that it's okay to say you're just being a homer.
That is very possible. It could be that I'm picking Toronto because I want Toronto to win, not because I think Toronto will win. That's hard to differentiate sometimes. Okay, so that will do it for the show. Archived versions of the show, as well as this particular episode, will be up on addictedtolacrosse.com, so feel free to check those ones out. If you want to get back to us about anything you see on the show, or even suggestions for future shows, you can email us at feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/laxpodcast, and we're on Twitter as well, laxpodcast there. So feel free to send us your suggestions or comments. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.